One document in tonight's file describes a sound your ear cannot hear that the CIA believed could move your mind outside of time itself. And it ends on a sentence nobody in the agency has ever been able to fully explain. The archive is open. Tonight's file is CIA RDP 96-00788, the agency's internal analysis of something called the Gateway Experience, a Monroe Institute audio program the CIA took seriously enough to write 28 pages about. Page 3 opens like a physics lecture, not a ghost story. The author wants you to understand hypnosis first, how the brain's two hemispheres talk to each other or don't.
The left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the mind. It fulfills the function of opening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to allowing passage to the right hemisphere of the mind. Consequently, if the left hemisphere can be distracted either through boredom or through reduction to a hypnotic semi-sleep state, external stimuli, to include hypnotic suggestions, are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere where they are accepted and acted upon directly.
That's the setup. Bypass the skeptic, and the rest of the mind takes suggestions as fact. A few pages in, the file turns to meditation and cites a vibration frequency measured in a car seat.
Bentoff cites as an example repeated riding in a car whose suspension and seat combination produce that range of vibrations, or being exposed for long periods of time to these frequencies caused, for instance, by an air conditioning duct. He also notes that the cumulative effect of these vibrations may be able to trigger a spontaneous physio-kundalini sequence in susceptible people who have a particularly sensitive nervous system.
An air duct triggering a spiritual awakening. The CIA wrote that down as science. Then it gets stranger. Biofeedback, the file claims, can apparently shrink tumors through concentration alone.
Pain can be blocked, healing can be enhanced, malignant tumors can apparently be suppressed and ultimately destroyed, the body's pleasure centers can be stimulated, and a variety of specific physiological results may be achieved.
Biofeedback and tumors, that's page 5. Page 7 is where the file explains the actual mechanism behind all of it, the thing that supposedly makes the tapes work at all, a phenomenon it calls the frequency following response.
Frequency following response, FFR, which means that if a subject hears a sound produced at a frequency which emulates one of those associated with the operation of the human brain, the brain will try to mimic the same frequency pattern by adjusting its brainwave output. Since the theta level is associated with sleep, the subject concerned may progress from a fully awake to a sleep state, provided that he does not consciously resist, as the brain strives to entrain its wave frequency output with the one which the person hears.
Sound alone, rewriting brainwaves. Page 8 pushes further, claiming the heartbeat itself creates a resonance pattern that gets broadcast straight into the skull. That resonance doesn't stay in the chest. Page 8 traces it upward into the skull itself through a specific anatomical route.
The resulting vibration is received and transmitted into the brain itself via the fluid-filled third and left ventricles located above the brain stem. An electromagnetic pulse is then generated which stimulates the brain to raise the...
The sentence cuts off there mid-thought, agency's own pagination, but page 9 picks it up. And the claim escalates from brain stimulation to something the file calls communication with other minds. Communication with other minds. Page 9 doesn't hedge on that claim. It describes the body itself generating a carrier wave off the Earth's own electromagnetic field, strong enough to link one tuned mind to another.
By resonating with the Earth's electromagnetic sphere, the human body creates a surprisingly powerful carrier wave to assist the mind in communication activity with other human minds similarly tuned.
Page 14 is where the file stops describing brainwaves and starts describing physics, claiming every oscillation, including the ones inside your skull, hits a point of total stillness, and in that instant the file argues something leaves time altogether.
But it is also true that when, for an infinitesimally brief instant, that energy reaches one of its 2 points of rest, it clicks out of time-space and joins infinity. That critical step out of time-space occurs when the speed of the oscillation drops below 10^33 centimeters per second, Planck's distance. To return to our case in point, The human consciousness wave pattern reaches such high frequency that the pattern of click-outs comes so close together that there is virtual continuity in,
and the sentence stops there. Page 14 ends mid-word. The CIA's own diagram tries to finish the thought instead. That's the frame. Now the file gets to its actual subject, Hemi-Sync, the tape technology at the center of Gateway. It works on something called the frequency following response.
If a subject hears a sound produced at a frequency which emulates one of those associated with the operation of the human brain, the brain will try to mimic the same frequency pattern by adjusting its brainwave output. If the human brain is exposed to one frequency in the left ear, which is 10 hertz below another audible frequency played in the right ear, rather than hearing either of the two audible frequencies, the brain chooses to hear the difference between them, the beat frequency.
Sound the ear can't consciously register, rewriting brainwaves anyway. The file claims this resonance doesn't stop at the skull. It says the whole body becomes a transmitter. That current up the sensory cortex isn't just a pulse. Page 5, and the file quotes Bentov again, this time on where the signal starts and which hemisphere it's really building.
Will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes and on up. That most of the described symptoms start on the left side of the body means that it is mostly a development occurring in the right hemisphere.
The human body, tuned to match the planet's own electric field. The document doesn't stop at metaphor. It quotes Bentov calling this field an actual medium for something specific. That current doesn't stay put. The file traces it as a physical signal riding the bloodstream, colliding inside the aorta, and turning the whole cardiovascular system into an amplifier.
Points will eventually collide somewhere along the aorta and produce an interference pattern. The result is a regular rhythmic sinewave pattern of sound which echoes throughout the body and rises into the head in sustained resonance. An electromagnetic pulse is then generated which stimulates the brain to raise the
Clicking out of time-space, that's the phrase the file actually uses, and it says the human consciousness wave moves fast enough that those clickouts stop being separate events entirely. A telepathic signal, written into a CIA file, no scare quotes. We'll come back to what the agency wanted this signal for. First, the file goes somewhere much further out, past physics as we know it. An information collection function, beyond time. The CIA didn't write that as poetry, they wrote it as a hypothesis worth testing. Deeper in the file, that theory becomes a training manual, focus 15 for the past, focus 21 for the future, and the file admits most people never get there. So how many people actually reach these states? The file gives a number, and it is not encouraging.
Probably less than 5% of all participants in any given gateway experience actually fully achieve the Focus 15 state during the course of the approximately 7 days of training. Nonetheless, Monroe Institute trainers affirm that with enough practice, eventually Focus 15 can be achieved.
Page 11 raises the stakes further. And here the file hands the microphone to a working psychologist. What he says stayed in an intelligence file for 40 years. Listen.
As psychologist Keith Floyd puts it, contrary to what everyone knows is so, it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain. Bentov states that scientists suspect that the human mind operates on a simple binary go-no-go system, as do all digital computers.
A binary mind, a secondary brain. The file is building toward a machine metaphor, and machines, in this file's logic, can be synchronized. 5% success, and they still recommended it. The manual's out-of-body chapter gets even stranger. It names an exact frequency, in cycles per second, like a technical spec sheet for a soul leaving a body. Hold that, the exact number is coming. The frequency numbers don't stand alone. Page 8 ties them to something physical, a resonance the file claims originates in the bloodstream and climbs into the skull itself.
The result is a regular rhythmic sinewave pattern of sound which echoes throughout the body and rises into the head in sustained resonance. The amplitude of this sinewave pattern, when measured with a sensitive seismograph-type instrument, is about 3 times the average of the sound volume produced by the heart when it is operating normally.
A sound wave, 3 times normal amplitude, engineered on purpose. Page 9 explains why the analyst thought that mattered, not just for the body, but for reaching something described as the frequency of the Earth itself. That neurological mechanism didn't come out of nowhere. Page 3 shows the analyst building the case from scratch, starting with the techniques everyone already recognized, before pivoting to the one they didn't.
In order to describe the Monroe Institute technique for achieving altered states of consciousness, the gateway experience, involving brain hemisphere synchronization, or Hemi-Sync, the most effective way to begin is to briefly profile the basic mechanics which underlay operation of related methods such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback.
Hypnosis, meditation, biofeedback. 3 known quantities used to smuggle in a 4th. That's the setup. And it's the same clinical tone the file keeps until page 24, when the numbers stop sounding academic.
Bob Monroe, the founder of Monroe Institute, is quoted in a recent magazine article as saying that in order to assist the participant, the particular tape concerned with that technique employs beta signals of around 2877.3 CPS, cycles per second. Since 30 to 40 CPS is considered to be the normal range for beta brainwave signals, those associated with the wakeful state,
90 times the normal wakeful frequency. Whatever that number actually did to a human brain, it cost taxpayers analyst hours to write up seriously, and the last pages of the file stop theorizing. They start planning missions.
This approach involves the use of 3 individuals in the out-of-body state, one viewing the target object here in time-space, one viewing it at focus 15 as it slips into the immediate past, and one viewing it at focus 21 as it slips from the immediate future. Debrief all 3 and compare data gathered from the 3 points of view.
3 viewers, 3 timelines, 1 target. That's not meditation advice. That's a reconnaissance protocol written for people who never leave a chair. The file even worries about defense. What happens if something comes back with you? Its answer isn't a lock or a wall, it's a group exercise.
Arrange to have groups of people in Focus 12 state unite their altered consciousness to build holographic patterns around sensitive areas to repulse possible unwanted out-of-body presences.
Unwanted presences. The document never explains what those are. It just tells you how to repel them and moves on to page 27's closing line, the one this whole file has been building toward.
If these experiments are carried through, it is to be hoped that we will truly find a gateway to gateway and to the realm of practical application for the whole system of techniques which comprise it.
Page 9 keeps pushing past the bloodstream resonance. It claims the body's frequency doesn't just stay internal, it sinks outward to the planet and turns the human nervous system into a receiver for something much bigger.
Coherence at steadily higher levels of frequency and amplitude so as to entrain analogous frequencies in the universe for data collection also promotes enhancement of body energy levels to a point adequate to permit the subject to experience an out-of-body movement when he is ready to do so. In addition, by resonating with the Earth's electromagnetic sphere, the human body creates a surprisingly powerful carrier wave to assist the mind in communication activity with other human minds similarly tuned.
A gateway to gateway. That's the sentence nobody's fully explained. An agency analyst, decades ago, admitting they'd only opened the first door. This file was declassified. The full Monroe Institute archive on remote viewing, Stargate, and what came after it, largely still isn't. Every file we read tonight is linked below. Don't take our word for it. Read them yourself. And if you want the next file on your desk, subscribe. New files every Tuesday and Friday.